Do you recall what de-industrialization means? De-industrialization is the loss of a country's industrial base to cheaper labor markets. And remember, there's been a massive decentralization of economies in the post-World War II era. In other words, corporations, businesses, industries, factories have moved from their traditional or historic centers to other places in the world, largely chasing higher profits and cheaper labor. And of course, this has been very rapid across the globe since the 1970s. Economies throughout the world are now very much tied together. So unless the name of your country is North Korea or Cuba or Iran or Syria, basically you are tied to the rest of the world. And you import things from the rest of the world and you export things to the rest of the world. And your economy is tied up in the economies of many, many other countries on the planet. This includes things like resources, where they're at, where they're coming from, where they're going. Manufacturing those resources, the natural resources, into some finished product. Transporting those finished products to wherever the market is going to be. Marketing those finished products to the population. Selling those finished products, and then ultimately the consumption of those finished products. This is happening across the globe. Again, all you have to do is look at your own clothing and see where it comes from, and know that that's just some of it. You know, where is the cotton coming from? Where are the dyes coming from? Where is the labor coming from? How is it being transported? What happens when it arrives at the ports? All of this stuff all goes together. It's a massive, massive undertaking. Well, how has this impacted services? Globalization and connectivity that's been afforded by the internet, along with rapid telecommunications, has allowed many corporations to seek cheaper labor markets outside of their traditional hearth, their traditional location, and provide services to consumers, especially consumer and business-oriented services, as we went through before, at cheaper costs. Now, one of the primary components of this is the ability of the population in a developing country to be able to speak serviceable English, because much of the English-speaking world also happens to make up a big chunk of the global market. And so what happens is countries like Canada, Canada's not always seen like this, but when you make phone calls, sometimes you end up with people in Canada. And of course, Canadians speak English. And of course, South Asia, especially India, the Philippines, increasingly Mexico, places like that have been able to take advantage of this shift away from developed countries to developing countries. Now, Canada, of course, is a developed country, but nevertheless, they have also been able to take advantage of this shift where the services move from one place to another because of the way the internet works, and then global connectivity through telecommunications, where you could put a business that's centered on services almost any place in the world, and it can service almost any other place in the world, provided you have electricity and connectivity. What this is known as is outsourcing. This is the movement of jobs, especially information and technology service sector jobs, to cheaper labor markets away from richer, developed, industrialized countries. And then those services are meant to accommodate the richer countries where the services originated. These pictures are pictures of call centers, as in where you make a phone call, and what ends up happening is it goes to a person in another place and they answer your question, whether that's about your credit card, whether that's about your upcoming travel, or whether that's about your computer. Why do people do this? Why do corporations do this? It's because it cuts costs, especially labor costs, but you still get expertise. An engineer in India is an engineer. And energy costs may be cut down. And of course, the company that's hosting the outsourcing may very well give massive tax breaks to corporations from developed countries to operate in their developing country and employ their population. It allows for flexible scheduling. Americans like to work at a certain time. And it saves time because you don't have to get people in. They're going to come in. And it cuts risks, especially legal risks, because if something goes wrong, you're going to be dealing with a foreign country, not the United States, where there are real legal options. India is the industry leader. Pretty much every single major city in India has lots and lots of call centers. What about some others? Well, China is one that's trying to get into the game. Here's the problem for the Chinese. India has had hundreds of years of contact with the English-speaking world. It was colonized by the British. And as a result of that, about a third of the population in India speaks English fluently. My experience in India is this, that people in India look at English not as a second language. They look at English as a mandatory co-inhabiting first language. So whatever their indigenous language is, say Hindi, they look at English as another version of a first language. It's remarkable. You cannot go around in India and not see signs everywhere in English and hear people being able to speak very, very good English. The problem for China is that only about 1% of their population is fluent in English, and it's mostly a kind of book-style English. And you're, of course, aware that English comes in many forms. There's a written form, there's a formal spoken form, and there's a very informal spoken form. Well, in China, the problem is that many people are not capable of speaking that informal English that we really all speak. And so they have a problem getting these kinds of jobs. The Philippines, though, totally different. Has a long history of speaking English. The English skills of many people in the Philippines are really high, and they have direct connections to the United States, which makes them a perfect place for outsourcing. Malaysia has a very similar situation, where it's a stable country, it has strong business concentration, and many people have very good English skills. Mexico and Brazil, well, English isn't a first language for these people, but we all know educated people in Mexico and Brazil are overwhelmingly capable of speaking English because they are going to learn it at the higher levels of education. And both of those countries have direct ties to the United States. And in addition to that, they occupy the same types of time zones that we occupy in the United States, which gives them a leg up.